teachers, Sarah, Nina, and Elise, who many of you have been observing in their classes the past couple of weeks, are here to talk to you. I myself have a child who's a third grader, so she's at the end of her second 3-year cycle, and I'm a Montessorian. I went to Montessori, I work here, I've seen kids through, and I'm still, as a parent, just so blown away by what happens in that third year, and like the blossoming, the confidence, everything coming together, and seeing it happen in my own kid is just a whole like reaffirming of my personal, our family's choice to be here for my child's education. So this is a night for you to ask your questions about what it's going to be like, for you to hear about this next level, the amazing enriched curriculum that happens at Montessori for first through third graders. And I'm going to be kind of floating back and forth. So if after tonight, if we don't touch base and you go home and you ponder and have more questions, give me a call. As you know, I've sent you many emails. I'm always happy to go out to coffee, and they know me at Lucky's Bakehouse, and talk about what's next and what choices you're making. So with that, I'll hand it over to everyone else here, and you'll hear from these two lovelies who are parents in our program as well, to talk about their child's experience and their family's experience. So thank you all for being here.
So I'm Sarah. Many of you have seen me and been in my classroom. I'm going to introduce these lovely people to you because both of these parents have students in my classroom. This is Forrest Linden, and this is Vanessa Zach. I'm listening to pronounce your last name.
It's Schatz. It's
Zach.
all good. Hi.
And so they're here just for the first part to sort of tell you about their experience, but then they need to jet over next door, so they won't have a lot of time. They want to hear what's happening in Senior Up. So we're just going to open with the two of them, and then we'll have a chance, the three of us teachers will have a chance to sort of tell you about the overview of the program, tell you about the developmental needs, and sort of give you an opportunity to just ask your questions, your burning questions. And that'll be it. Okay, so we're going to start with Forrest. And Forrest has a son in my classroom who is a third year, so he's going to tell you a little bit about him.
Awesome. So my son's name is Noah. He is 8 years old now. Started in Jarrow, I think 4 years ago. Emily's class, kindergarten was in 3.5, because he's almost done with 3 grade. So it was 2012. I'm actually reading off notes here because Sarah gave me a whole, not a script, but prompts, and I memorized them, so I'm going to be looking down. We found out about Jarrow because we're friends with Gavin outside of the school. So my wife has known Gavin for 20-ish years, and we found out about Jarrow through her, and then we were over at Journey School when he was in the first years of kindergarten, and then we came and toured here, and they mentioned something in the tour about an entrepreneurial program in 4th grade, which hooked me, and I was like, oh, that please. I haven't heard anything else about that, but that got us in the door. And yeah, the whole Montessori approach was really appealing to me back then. So that's kind of what got us in here. In terms of, so Noah was in Emily's, that's considered kindergarten, right?
It's primary up through E56 is kindergarten.
Okay. So he loved that phase of Montessori. There was a lot of biscuit baking, as I'm sure happens for your kids if they're already here. We heard about the biscuits almost every day. The main nervousness he had about going into the next grade was that he wouldn't get to do biscuits anymore. So there was no fear about transitioning into Sarah's classroom because he didn't know what it was going to be like. After he got in, he had some trouble because there's suddenly 3 years worth of kids, and my son's pretty competitive with sports, and he applies it into school as well, and so he started comparing himself to the third years who could read really well, and Noah was slightly behind the curve on reading when he came into Sarah's class, and so that I think was the big challenge for him when he came in, and he started to get the first few months. Then we had a transition challenge, because then it was like he was stressed out and he didn't even know what stress was. Like, I asked him one night, do you know what stress is? He's like, yeah, it's a salad dressing, isn't it?
Stress.
Sort of not. But he had some trouble with that. And then by the end of the first year, his reading started to pick up. That became less of an issue. Over the course of the last 2.5 years, his reading just like took off. And I'm still blown away by what he can do at home and driving around town. He's reading everything. He'll pick up adult books and magazines and just like zip through them, and I'm like, oh my God, this is the same kid a year and a half ago who was comparing himself to the third years and was having trouble reading the board in the morning. So that part was really amazing to watch. So that's transition. We got a ton of support from Sarah. Noah was doing this thing where he still is doing it. He's making up rules that don't exist in the classroom. One of them, which is he feels like if he hasn't finished his work, he's not allowed to go out to recess. And somehow he thinks that Sarah and Colleen set that rule up, and it's absolutely not the case. So that was a challenge that we've struggled with, and we've got a ton of support from Sarah. I'd email her. The first time I emailed her, I was like, what the heck's going on with this? Why is he not being let outside, though? That's ridiculous. Like, and then because I didn't realize that he was like, I didn't know he was capable of making up rules and then saying that the teachers made it up. So that was a challenge. For some reason, he still got that stuck in his head, no matter how many times all three of us, the two teachers and both parents, us, are telling him. Anyway, but Sarah has been, and Colleen has been amazing. Like, any trouble we have with him emotionally, struggles he's having with their kids, or this year he feels he's a little bit behind on spelling. If he can't do the spelling, there's some tests, right? Ish, or tests, sort of. And he can't do them as fast, and so that's his competitiveness coming again, and now he's comparing himself to other kids who are finishing faster, and there's an incredible amount of support around the emotional side of his development, which is amazing. I don't know that we would be getting that in public school. We probably wouldn't, but so yeah, those are so changes that we've seen in him. He is way more confident now than when he started in Sarah's class in first grade. He is in love with math. He can read like crazy. I work a lot with him on science stuff at home, so he's got this body of knowledge and skills to wield it, and he's super clever. The way that comes out sort of on the challenging side is that he's so smart that he's like a little lawyer, and he will negotiate deals every single day. He's always looking to make a deal. No, Papa, I know you want me to take 6 bites, but I'm going to take 3.5. And then I get to have a popsicle. Like, it's just like, what is, like, he does it with everything. So he's gotten, clever is sort of, he's like a lot smarter now. And I think it's coming from Jarrow, but it can sometimes challenge us. It's like we don't expect that level of cognitive capacity in an 8-year-old. And he's, sitting down with the Rubik's Cube, and he was like, huh, and I was like 3 minutes and I'm like, what? How did you just do that? He's like, I don't know. So there's been a ton of growth around his skills and things that he's picking up in class. So words of wisdom. There will be things that come into the household and you don't know where they're coming from, and you may not expect them, and it's coming from the learning environment. One of the things that caught me off guard was 3 weeks ago. It was a Saturday, so there was no school. He was sitting on the couch. It was about lunchtime, and I was like, no, what do you want to eat? And he said, well, for my appetizer, I would like to have baby hot dogs, and then for my main meal, I would prefer to have tuna fish on rice crackers, and then for my dessert, I would like 1 scoop of chocolate ice cream, 1 scoop of vanilla ice cream. I'm like, what? Is this a restaurant? Like, I'm like, appetizers? And I didn't know that, like, that's how they talk about mealtime. It's super structured and organized, and like every meal has a part of, and they have names, and I didn't know. So I was like, I was about to get on him for being like, no, you realize you sound like a spoiled child that's ordering his parents to create meals like a restaurant. And he's like, no, this is how we talk, this is what we do in school. Like, what are you talking about? Like, and I was like, oh, okay, no problem, got it. So there are things that's just a part of their life that they get from the classroom, and they bring it home, and you may not always know where it's coming from. And sometimes it can sound different, like you think it's something that's not. It's just, that's the water they swim in school. So, and I think the bigger thing is what I mentioned, that your kids may compare themselves to the third years, when they're coming in to the first year, because there's 3 levels all at once, and that can cause, I'm sure, different challenges in different kids, but I think that's it. What else?
Well, I think I want to clarify that too, because in my classroom it's a little bit different than Elise and Nina's classroom. So when we talk about work plans, I have the kids tell me verbally what their plan is for the morning. And it's an appetizer, which basically means something they can do independently, that they don't need a lot of support, that they've had a lesson, they know how to do it, it's practice. The main meal is to be juicy, something that's going to be challenging. Usually it's a new math, or it's a new language word, or something that they might need an older student to help them with, or a peer. And then the dessert is, again, something that's sort of finishing off the morning work cycle, something they can do that's independent. They might need a little bit of help, or maybe they need to wrap something up, but it's something that's not like a new lesson. So that's how they talk, and that's another reason why we talk about the appetizer, main meal, and the dessert. So that's the lingo. And yeah, we do talk about that at lunchtime too, but there's sort of the duality there. I also wonder if you could share a little bit about what you've heard about being a mentor
From Noah?
from Noah, like as coming in,
Right.
having a mentor, and then
Yeah.
being a
He
mentor.
was super excited to have a mentor. He thought that was pretty neat to learn from an older kid and get shown around. So he really liked that relationship. And then he was way more excited to actually be a mentor, because then I think he just felt like, oh, I know this place, and this is my room, and it's like he felt like he didn't use these words, but I think he felt like it was his family and like his territory. I get to show somebody else around, and he felt important, and he loved that. So those weren't so much his words as just the impression I got from the way he talked about it and how excited he was when he'd get home. It's like, Pop, I'm a mentor, and I've got this. Who was he teaching this year?
Let's see, he has Liam, who
That was
actually
Liam.
is second.
Right. So he and Liam kind of became buddies, and he just enjoyed that relationship quite a bit. So yeah.
So this is Vanessa, and she has a daughter in my classroom.
Cool. I'm gonna jump right in, and I'm gonna condense some of the information because some of it is redundant also in the interest of time. So I'm Avienda's mom. My husband Liam is actually in the back, and we've been part of the Jarrow community for 4 years. Our story is a little bit different. We actually transitioned here as a German-American family. So Avienda transitioned from Germany and having gone through the public schooling system out there. So she started in Mercedes, in Sarah's classroom. Mercedes is no longer here. And what was interesting about her development was she didn't speak while she was in kindergarten, and she was perfectly fine. She was perfectly integrated, and outside of school, like play dates, she was fine. But while at school, she just wouldn't talk. She would whisper to the teachers, and that may have been part of the intercultural transition, or may have been just her sense of maybe exerting control over environment. We didn't worry about it at all. Like, she talked to us at home, and she had friends, and it was all good. But maybe a little bit more unusual in terms of her overall educational development. And in terms of moving into a new classroom, I remember when we were in your shoes, I think her biggest concerns were shifts in social dynamics. So kind of facing that transition of, oh, some of my friends are going to go to other schools, right? And because for her the community piece was so important to her learning and to her education, and suddenly it was like, where are all my friends going? What does that mean for me, right? And there will be a new teacher, and will they be as nice? And all of these questions started coming up at home. But honestly, I can say that the transition has been very smooth. It's been really, really quite amazing actually to see her grow so much. She's now a third grader. And in terms of the first semester of first grade, Avienda, she continued to be pretty quiet in the classroom, so she slowly started talking more. But I think for her it was more about discovering her skills. So one thing that we noticed was everything that she learned in kindergarten and what she was exposed to there. I felt like there was a lingering sense of empowerment throughout the last 3 years, and especially now that she's a third grader. So big shift, and as soon as she had her social dynamics figured out, I really feel like grade 1 through 3 are so much about social dynamics and friendships and human connections, whether it's with teachers or with kids of different ages, and that's why I think this model is so lovely. I mean, growing up in Germany, I didn't have that. We were all separated. It was first grade, second grade, third grade, and here to have different ages together that can empower each other, I think it's actually really cool. So biggest changes throughout the last 2.5 years was probably now Avienda is really finding her voice, and like Forrest pointed out, to see your kid apply the skills that they've attained to projects, to human connections, to friendships, super cool. So whether it's math, reading, the mentorship role has been huge for her, since she used to be the quiet, shy kid that never used to talk, and now she's the kid who's helping the young kids transition and basically foster their identity in the classroom. So that's worked really, really well for us, and we love it. And let's see. Oh, support teachers. Yes, thumbs up. I mean, throughout our entire time here at Jarrow, we feel like we've been really, really, really fortunate to have found this community. And I can primarily speak to Sarah and Colleen, and heard great things about you as well. Very hands-on support, great availability. I mean, I just feel like it's been a little family. I also feel like on a parent's level, the social dynamic shift, which has been super fun. I feel like they become more involved in each other's lives as the kids play more with one another, and I think Jarrow does a really good job of fostering that environment as well, whether it's after school happenings and so forth. So kudos to that. And last but not least, words of wisdom. I was thinking about that question earlier. I think understanding and honoring that those 3 years are huge in terms of development, like Forrest pointed out as well, right? So I remember, I think during one of our earlier parent-teacher conferences, I was like, oh, I think reading came up as well, and I was like, so she might not be reading as well, but looks like math is doing pretty well, right? But what does that mean for the personal development of your child? And honestly, be patient. I think at the time I was like, okay, do I need to start thinking more academically about my child, right? Do I need to start thinking about performance, and what if she's going to transition into public school eventually? Is she going to be at like all that kind of churning noise? And I was like, no, like turn that off. It doesn't matter right now. Those are 3 very important years developmentally, right? So just trust that this community, and especially the educational resources we have in place, will empower your child as much as they can. And there's so much she can discover on her own as well. And so in terms of wisdom, and there's something about trusting and being patient and just understanding that your kid needs to grow on it. I mean, she has to grow on her own. And again, I love, love, love the development in terms of human relations. That's probably the most powerful thing for me, just to see her learn while developing really, really strong bonds with other kids and with teachers. So that's my 2 cents.
There you go. Can you see that okay? Mm-hmm. All right. So we're moving into, so Maria Montessori, she was a doctor, and she sort of observed children for many, many years and decided in terms of child development, there are different planes of development. I'm sure some of you have heard about the planes of development. As children move from primary into elementary, they're moving into the second plane of development. And the second plane goes from 6 to 12. Lower elementary is kind of the first half of the second plane of development. We're going to focus on that tonight. But just keep in mind that a lot of the characteristics that I'm going to describe go all the way up to 12-year-olds and beyond. But this is sort of a big transition, and you'll see really huge shifts for your children, especially over the summer. You'll be surprised. You'll see suddenly big mood changes, or just even the physical growth is really surprising. Your child is here, and then suddenly they're here. So you'll see a lot of big developmental changes, physically and emotionally and psychologically. So the universe shivers with wonder in the depths of the human. Brian Swim is an amazing author. He writes a lot of Montessori informational books on cosmic education. If you're curious, he has beautiful things to say. The age of reason, which is called the reasoning mind, children ask questions like why and what if. I had a student for the last 3 years who would walk around the classroom and say things randomly to no one in particular. What if this? What if that? It was sometimes a distraction because it would create everyone to want to discuss that, but it was also his way of really exploring his world and theorizing out loud. What could happen in my world? Because the possibilities are endless at this age. So their imagination is really stimulated. And then the big questions start coming in and they become very philosophical. Like, why am I here? What am I doing? What's my purpose in life? In the 3 to 6, there's 3 to 6 acquisitions of how to move into the higher level. One is movement. So for them, just like in the primary age, they need to be moving their bodies, but now it's in a very different way. It's more fine motor. They're learning how to write, they're learning how to use scissors, they're learning how to really fine-tune their movements, including how do I move around my classmates, how do I use smaller materials, how do I manipulate things that take multiple steps, hold things in my mind, and manipulate my body. So there's a lot of movement that happens. Sense of order really shifts too. So their sense of order is very social. It's about rule following. It's about looking up to their parents and their teachers as idols and heroes. And suddenly they're really focused on right and wrong. Sense of justice becomes really prominent. We'll talk about that more tonight. But you'll see children fixate on it's not fair. Well, we talk a lot at this age about life is not fair, and what's fair for one person who might need glasses, it's not fair for everybody to wear glasses, right? So we all have different needs. So we talk about students who have individual accommodations within the classroom and what that looks like. We talk about that with the students so that they're understanding why everybody has certain needs and life is just not going to look the same for all of us. But they focus a lot on fairness, and rules, especially within the classroom, is really important. So you talk about classroom constitutions and expectations. As Forrest had mentioned, sometimes they create something that they think they might have heard, and it's translated in their own mind, and that becomes very real to them. When you find yourself in this battle, occasionally you'll see that. Just let it go. Don't let it become an ongoing battle, because they're trying to sort out and acquire their own knowledge, and it'll scaffold over time. Moral development. We spend a lot of time talking about history and what does that mean for our life here today. And we spend a lot of time, all three of us, talking about civics. So we're looking at the history of presidents and the history of voting, and they're really starting to look at the bigger picture in the world around them. They're hearing news when they come into school, on the radio with you. They are understanding this now. They're going to ask you questions. They want to know what's going on. They hear about wars. They believe that in Boulder there's no such thing as war, and so therefore it doesn't happen anywhere else. And then suddenly, oh, there is war, and am I safe? So you're going to have those kinds of questions, and there's going to be a lot of development in that process of understanding what's happening in the world. And then we go into cosmic education, which we'll talk more about later. Language development is huge. It's when we talk about grammar, they're ordering rules around grammar, they're understanding how syntax works, they're understanding how to write sentences, how to write paragraphs, but they're also ordering their reality. So through writing and through language, whether it be oral or written, they're expressing themselves, but they're ordering their lives. Maybe it's in a journal, or maybe it's how they experienced something throughout the day, or maybe it's my work plan and how I want to schedule my day. So language comes in many different forms. It's a tool of expression, creativity, and sometimes just play. Story writing is always so fun. And sometimes kids come in and that's all they want to do, and they have no idea how to read what they've just written, but it's on paper. So when they're still learning how to write, they can still tell a story even if they can't read their own writing. So that's part of the process. And they learn a lot of languages patterns. So we talk about idioms of the week and history around that, as well as how do we create a system for poetry. The sensitive period is really important for looking at culture. So we talk about the experiences around our world, not just within Boulder, but within what's a state, what's a country, what's happening around the world. We do a lot of geography. We look at nature. We have an outdoor education teacher here who is phenomenal. We love her. There's a lot of growing and picking and making foods at our level. There's a lot of cooking that goes on. There's salves that they're making. They're understanding why cultivation is happening, and a lot of them are now making the connection that, oh, the food in the grocery store wasn't grown in the grocery store. Oh, it came from somewhere. Oh, it came from the earth. And then we talk a lot about seasons and the earth and the cycle of life. Human culture is a big piece because they want to know where they came from, and they want to know where you came from and where their ancestors came from. So we make a lot of connections that way. Some of our parents speak different languages. Some of them are new to this country. And then we go all the way into looking at culture all over the world and ancient civilizations. So that's really good. I'm going to start to move a little bit faster, so if anybody wants me to send a slideshow, I'm happy to do that. Socialization, again, I talked about hero worship and organizing social activities in terms of games and rule following. We do a lot of cultivation around peace education, just as we follow from the primary. So problem solving, restorative justice. If a child is hurt, how do we repair the harm? What does that look like? What kind of questions do you need to ask somebody to find out how you can help them feel better if you accidentally stepped on their foot? You know, children react sometimes like this, and they will go to a place of, you did it on purpose. So how do we get to a place of, well, I really did it, and I really need you to hear me. So we spend a lot of time learning how to listen and practice those skills. Also in the Montessori classroom, we spend a lot of time understanding how we're connected to the rest of the world in terms of our community, but also connected to people who are way across the globe. We do a lot of, sometimes we're doing letter writing, sometimes we're doing projects where we're trying to fundraise for people or children across the world that don't have enough or don't have what we have. So we talk about that. I did touch on these, so I'm going to just kind of move forward. This is a really important age for children to understand sort of the cosmic task of why they're here. So we do the great lessons, and that includes a lot of going out. So we'll do follow-ups from the Big Bang. Maybe we'll go to the CU campus and go into the, I've just lost it. Thank you, yes. We go to Nature and Science. We go to the different museums that talk about space, and we go to the recycling center. So we're talking about things that happen here, and then we're bringing them out into the community. So here are the typical questions that we talk about. Cosmic task, why am I here? So the big lessons are creation of the universe, the coming of life, coming of humans, the story of language and writing, and the invention of numbers. And that just opens the whole world to everything that we do. Here's some cute kids. Oops, there we go. They get really tall as third years, and this is probably one of my tallest. They grow out of their chairs. There's a lot of self-reflection, and that can be painful. Just be prepared for that. Sometimes it's really hard to look inward. We do a lot of celebration of who we are, so we have birthday celebrations, celebration of life, timelines, poetry, exploration of morality, where they're really understanding how to judge themselves in a positive way. Children oftentimes are very negative and hard on themselves. So we reframe things and we talk about how can we reframe that? Oh, I made a mistake. Oh, it's really okay. And then why is it okay to make a mistake? Because children sometimes can be very perfectionistic and they want to please you and they want to please their teachers and they feel like if they do something wrong that life is over. And so we spend a lot of time going, you know what? It's important that you make a mistake because if you don't make mistakes, you don't grow. And so there's a lot of dialogue around. And mistakes are important. Sometimes we have guests come in. We talk. Sometimes we go out and we spend a lot of time talking about cycle of life. So here's a friend of mine who came in. He introduced some music and his handmade beautiful xylophone. And he's from Ghana, so what he does is he talks about how his music is played for 3 days during a memorial for someone who has died, and how there's celebration and dance, and there can be wonder and happiness, and feel the sadness. Dia de los Muertos, we talk about other traditions, experiential learning, rule following when we go out. This year we did Calwood, which was so fun. We'll be doing next year another tradition. This is a brand new tradition where we'll spend a day at Calwood, which is up in the mountains, doing team building. Again, geography is where we start, but then they start creating their own works. Plays sometimes happen. It's not every year. We do a lot of practical life in terms of the form of being mentors, but that also means doing jobs in the classroom to keep the environment lovely and beautiful. Book buddies, so we go into the other classrooms and reread with students. They do a lot of things such as thank you letters and thanking their community. So you'll see that, but you'll also see thank you letters to people who just work within the school, so that they're understanding how to have grace and courtesy coming from them. Book buddies, they're so cute. Again, a lot of team building when they're working together. We do talk a little bit about pen pals and peace box, where we're problem solving. We do role plays in terms of how we can solve problems. I put in here somatic meditation. Every teacher is different, but we do talk about body awareness a lot at the school. Happiness is not something ready-made. It comes from your actions, and that goes really and that's pretty much it for what we're going to talk about in terms of development. So thank you for that. I'm going to pass it on to Elise.
Vanessa did is just the scaffolding for the transition from kindergarten to first. So I also have a kindergartner, Kyla, in Miss Shelley's class, and Nate is also in Miss Shelley's class. She is a kindergartner as well. So the things that are on your mind are on our minds as well, just so you know. So when I was putting this together, I was like, what do I want to know? Like how, because there are things even for me, being here, a teacher, an educator, and a mama, like I'm freaking out, like there are things that I'm like, how's this going to be for my child, and how is the transition going to be? Because the truth is that it's a big leap for these friends. It's a big change to come into a classroom where all of a sudden they have a plan of work that they must complete. There are rote assignments, there are deadlines, there are things that they haven't experienced before, and how do we scaffold that for them so that they can come into the experience and have success, not come in and just freeze, and then be completely overwhelmed by what it all entails, but actually like how do we scaffold that so that they can come in and have success and see that this is stuff that they can do. And yes, it's a big change, but it's a doable change, and it's a good change, and it's a change that they're ready for. So we do the mentor program where every child has an older friend who essentially kind of shows them around, answers their questions, helps them orient to the classroom, to the peers. We do the first week of school a lot of team building activities where we went to Calwood as a whole elementary team and everybody got mixed up and did all sorts of just nature-based outdoor activities together just to get to know each other. We do things like self-portraits. We do like find a person who went on a trip over the summer, find a person who wears glasses, and then everyone kind of has to connect. We do a lot of just team building and orienting the first week just to kind of help people get to know each other and feel comfortable. And that is the nice part about having a 3-year age span in your classroom, is that, you know, it's not a bunch of 6-year-olds doe-eyed, like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? But we have, you know, the middle second years who've been there before and it's still a little fresh, and then we have the third years who are ready to help, and they've grown into these wonderful little teachers, and they're here to kind of just hold that space for those little guys who are coming in and wanting to know, how's this gonna be for me? And they have these older children who are capable and ready to help. So we do keep a clear schedule. We all have a way of doing kind of a message on the board when they come in, so the children know what my schedule is for the day. What are the expectations? What am I gonna do? Do I have movement? Do I have music? Is it a day where I have a lesson and on the board it says these are the lessons and these are the friends we're gonna have the lessons. So there's a clear schedule so that the children can kind of see what that looks like each day. And then, of course, the older children are always there to help them read the board, to help them with their work plan, to just help kind of support that transition. So the nice part also about a 3-year cycle is, you know, if the first 6 months of first grade is hard, if the first year of first grade is hard, they have 3 years. And I will say that there are some friends who the first year is really is challenging. It's a big transition, and not that they're not learning and growing, because they are. But then all of a sudden in second grade, these other things start to connect, because it took them a year to kind of find their feet. And they're finding their feet, and that's the work that they need to do. So by the third year, it's like it's all there and it's together. And then the work that maybe was lagging in the second year is all of a sudden just speeding ahead. So the importance of having the 3 years and just the growth, and then the ability for the child to, you know, not just have a year in first grade and then, oh, you're off to second grade with a new community and a new teacher, and now you've got to figure that whole situation out again. You know, they're here, and so they have the opportunity to have that space to kind of grow at their own pace, essentially. So we also wanted to mention too that you know, when Maria Montessori put this together, and her son, they thought of this as a 6 to 12, really. So there are schools where the elementary program is 6 years through 12 years old. And so it's important too to think about it as that. So really the 1st through 3rd is the first half, and the 4th through 6th is the second half. And it really is a lovely continuum. If you feel kind of committed to that elementary experience, the whole span of it is really worth sticking around for, because what you see in 1st through 3rd again comes back around, and in 4th through 6th it just builds and builds and builds, and then you've got these 6th graders who will just blow your mind. Just incredible what they can do, what they know, who they know, what they know about themselves as learners and as human beings. So the big picture here. So we have there are small learning groups that they may be working with the whole year, and this may be their spelling group. So we do an SRA spelling program, and they may be with this group all year. We have a reading program, McGraw-Hill Reading Wonders, and that's their book group. They may be with their reading group and their spelling group. This may be their learning group for the year. Of course, we have flexibility, so if a child is ready to move on, they can move on into a different group. So there are small groups by ability that may have specific lessons at specific times during the week. We also have large group lessons. So Sarah mentioned the great stories. So that's when everybody comes together and they experience the story together. They work together to do a follow-up work and kind of integrate that as a group. We also have just small group lessons with a mixed age group. Just, sometimes I'll sit to give a lesson to two friends and I can see an outlier kind of like, oh, whoa. And then I'll call that person over and say, would you like to watch? Would you like to join? So there's that kind of fluidity within that as well. It's not like you're set in this learning group and this is your group. If there's a piece or something that they're into, if they want to observe a lesson, or there's the freedom to have that as well. And then the nice thing too is that, we're able to sit and have one-on-one lessons with children. We're able to sit and do really focused work with children who may need it. And not that that's all the time, but that's something that we can do. I was able to do that today with a friend who I was giving a lesson with, and I realized she needs me to do some focused one-on-one with her. So I sent the group away and she and I just got to sit and work together. And that's a gift really as a teacher. I have a friend who teaches in public school and she's like, I have 32 kids, I don't have time to get to know anybody. And we know them very well, and we have the opportunity to be with them and sit with them and work with them and get to know them as learners in this environment, which is amazing, really.
What is the class size?
The class varies anywhere between, I would say, 14 to 20, just dependent on numbers. I've been here 10 years and it's been anywhere in between those. I had a year where I had 11 one year. And I was able to do a lot with 11 kids. The work that we could do was just incredible. But, I would say in general 17, 18-ish. I think now we're like 15, 16, 17 is what it looks like for us this year. So, practical life. So I know Miss Kyla, my daughter, loves to do, she does like some soap shaving stuff, and like there's stuff that as an elementary teacher I'm like, all right, well, okay. She's like, and I'm wiping the tables like this, and she's pouring, and so there's none of that in here. It's very different, and not that we don't do it, it's just we don't have an area of the classroom for that work. That is like a foundational work for those 3 to 6-year-old children. And when they come in here, that is not here. And so it does look different, and it feels different because they don't have that. What that looks like in our classroom is we have jobs. So I have friends who vacuum, do laundry, fold laundry, water the plants, take care of our toads, assign seats, dismiss children, line children up. They kind of run the show in many aspects, and that is a big piece of practical life. As Sarah mentioned, the social development, where do I fit in, how am I in this group, who am I in this group, that's so important to them. And that almost becomes where the practical life piece in 3 to 6, where they're really working on their fine motor, and there's that really hands-on piece. At this age kind of falls away and it becomes all about my friends, my community, who am I, what are the rules, how am I fitting. And so that's kind of how we honor the practical life piece at this age. We take field trips much more frequently, we ride on buses, we interact with adults on field trips. It's just a different experience as far as the practical life, the development of the social self. And that's the piece that for them, that's what they need, that's what they want, that's what we're working on at this age. They give reports, so they do learn how to speak in front of an audience. We did a Pinewood Derby, and we just finished that up, and we had a fair where each child we made like a presentation board, kind of like a science fair, and then we opened it up to all the parents who came and just watched the children, even the 6-year-olds, display their car, speak about their car, the physics behind it, the simple machines, all the things that we'd studied, and they're able to have that skill of communicating and speaking and speaking truthfully and with knowledge and with confidence. And so, we foster that stuff at this age. In my class, we stand up in the spring and we have a room full of parents and siblings, and each child stands and speaks about their area of study. And, it's mind-blowing, really, to have to watch a 6-year-old do it, who maybe, you know, I had a year where I just whispered the words because he couldn't read, and then he just spoke the words out loud and was so proud, and just that. I mean, that in and of itself, to think that they can come to a place where they can do that. That's all part of the practical life experience here in elementary. So I did talk about the great stories, and Sarah did as well. That's a big piece of what we do here. Maria Montessori called it cosmic education. And I don't know if you guys have children who ask why. It's exhausting at my house, the why. But I do realize, it's funny, like as a parent sometimes I'm like, wow, I have no patience. Why do I have all this patience as a teacher? And my kid's like, why? And I'm like, because.
Mine's the one.
Yeah.
What is Nate? What is this? What is that?
Right, Kyle asks why a lot. And so we take the time to explain, like, why? Well, here's why. Or actually, I have no idea why. We have to Google it and let's see what happens. I don't know why I can answer that. You know, and so we bring the great stories to them to kind of touch their imagination and show them kind of the immensity, the vastness of the possibility of the universe, of life, of human beings, our potential, where we've come from, what we've done, what we can do. And that's all stuff that really connects and resonates with them. So the other big picture piece, and I'll touch on that again more specifically, is like, so what are the expectations like with work plan? So in primary, it is a little bit more free flow. There is opportunity for choice. There is some structure, but also, you know, it is more open. Whereas, like I said in here, there's freedom. And I think people maybe think Montessori, you come into a Montessori class and it's just free and you just choose and it's great. And yes, that is absolutely part of it. But at this age, there's freedom within the box of the responsibilities, the work, the choice, you know. And sometimes that looks like, you know, you have a very specific list of works. These are the works you have to do, and then you may choose what order you want to do these works. Or they can approach you and say, I'm interested in doing these 2 things, and maybe they've already spent 3 days doing those 2 things. So no, that's not a choice anymore. Now it is time to do these other things. These are the choices that you have. Yes?
So is there homework that they do at home?
So this is the biggest question of all. There is not homework, but there can be homework. So there can be homework in, okay, this is just not getting done, and now it's piling up, and now it needs to go home. There can be homework, and I have a child today who was just so inspired and excited by doing place value in the millions, and she just had to take it home. She couldn't wait, literally, she could not wait to finish it, and she just had to take it home. So she came to her mom. I walked her to the gate today, and she came to her mom and said, I have homework. And she was just thrilled, and her mom was thrilled, and, you know, so it can also be like, you know, I have a girlfriend who has a son in 2nd grade, and he's doing Common Core, and he comes home with these sheets of work, and I was at her house the other night, and it just blew my mind, and I was like, this is ridiculous. And he didn't understand, so it was meaningless to him what he was doing. Why am I doing this? What is the purpose? You know, which is what they ask. And so, you know, we're not going to send them with meaningless work. Meaningless work is not going to come home. So homework can be inspired by a child. I have children who ask to bring work home or ask me for homework specifically. So sure, absolutely, you want to do it? Do it. And then there's also times where it comes home because it just has to. We got to get it done, and it's got to go home. And again, that's just part of kind of learning the responsibility, learning the time management, learning that there's expectations. So no, there's not homework, but there can be homework. Yeah. Yeah.
How do you monitor whether or not they're focusing on one thing?
So in my class, we have a work, so I create kind of a master work plan of these are kind of what Sarah talked about. Here are your appetizers, these are your practice choices. These are works you've had a lesson on before, and you're needing to practice these works. here are your new lessons. These are the lessons that you're going to get. These are your big pieces. This is your challenging work. And then here are some, again, I wouldn't say dessert, but here are some like choices that you're inspired by. So I have a child who's really into World War II in Europe. So like his inspiration looks like he's making a map of Europe and he's like mapping out all the battles. And that's kind of his like impassioned place that he's coming from right now. So then in my class, what I do is they have to make a plan in the morning. In other classes, it might be they make a verbal plan, and then at the end of the day, they record what they've done. But there has to be an accountability. So if you're writing nothing, or you're coming to me and you're showing me that you're writing a map as your choice for the day, that doesn't work. So then we have to go back and remake the plan together, or rediscuss what. So you know you have to do math, you know you have to do language. Here are the 2 assignments that you need to complete from before. And then we kind of help scaffold that in order to see that, you know, they are getting pieces from everything. Does that make
So
sense?
like we have like an observer, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like who won't do anything until they
Right.
feel like they've got it right.
Right.
So is there like how do you mitigate that? Like, you know, and just give them a goal that they have to set, or?
They, absolutely. So they can set a goal for themselves, for sure. And I have that as part of their work plan. They have a personal goal and an academic goal. And I can even help scaffold the goal for them. You know, what are you wanting to do? What are you needing to do? How are you wanting to push yourself to get there?
Like
You
you feel
know.
like you have time with that with like 15 to 20 students?
And I think part of that too is that we talk with the kids about taking a risk. So you're putting your thoughts on paper, it's a risk.
Right.
You're gonna spell something wrong, and it's okay,
Right.
but
Yeah.
you've gotta take the risk.
Right.
You know, a math process, well, I think I can do it on my own, but I don't know. And I have a second grader who will talk to himself and talk to me for 5 minutes about, I think I know what to do, but I'm just not sure, and he'll go on, and I'm like, you know, you just have to take that risk, we're gonna do it. So I've got my paper here, you go do it right now, and you know, but it's a huge risk. You know, it's something you're doing independently, you're putting something out there, whether it's solving a math problem or putting out independent writing, taking a risk to spell something wrong, or what you feel about something, having an opinion, like, that's scary.
And I think too, the nice thing about having older children in the classroom is there can be someone who can sit with them and support them in that, you know, support them in that work. And maybe they don't want a teacher, you know, maybe they need a peer to kind of inspire them. I've had first graders who are more inspired by their peers than they are by their teachers. And so I really encourage peers to kind of take that role as much as they can, give this child this lesson. You know, sit with this child as she's working on this because I know she feels unsure. And you can kind of be the person, the child can be the person, you know, to inspire the other child, which really works pretty much every time.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes they don't want the adult. And when I first did my training, you know, I came out and I just felt so kind of, I had to adhere like perfectly to how I was trained. And one of the things that they talked so much about was like, you, the adult, you're like the outlier. I mean, you're not in the classroom to be anything but the connector to the work. And then the children should be the ones who are running the show. And you are the person who's in the corner waiting for a child, watching, waiting for someone to reach out. You don't just insert yourself in. And so that works. I mean, it really does. It works, you know, and I don't necessarily think it has to be that way, but with some children, it works.
Can I
Yeah.
just add to that?
Mhm.
'Cause, so a lot of children, not just your child, they're observers.
Yeah.
And so what I find in this unique environment as opposed, because I used to teach public school too, which was a traditional setting, is that just like Elise was talking about, the older children really are the key. I mean, it is such a family environment. So they're receiving lessons that are maybe at a higher level, and those new students are coming in and going, oh, I want to do that. So they just stand and watch for, it could be 2 years they're watching that same lesson. And then they come to you and say, when am I ready? Let's go. And you say, not yet.
Okay, so what does a day look like? So there's a message on the board, and that's kind of how they begin the day. It could be greet a friend. For my class, we're reading the Narnia series, so some of them have spelling corrections from their spelling work, and some of them get to write about the book that we're reading because they just so love to listen to stories. And it could be just instructions on how to start the work, how to start the day, what to do. We have specials, we have art, music, we have PE twice a week, we have Spanish, and we have book buddies. So those are all things that are a part of our day, so they're transitioning in and out of the classroom. Very much more than they're doing in a primary classroom, and it's much easier at this age for them to kind of transition in and out. They go in and out without us, they walk themselves to Chad's, they walk themselves back. They know how to walk in line, they know how to get themselves there and organize themselves. You know, they're ready for not being in here all the time, but to experience other adults in other classrooms. They have journals, they have work folders, they have work completion expectations, they have assignments with due dates, they do research, they write reports, they learn how to take notes, they have rote assignments where they have to memorize additions facts, subtraction facts, multiplication facts, division facts, and we're working on them over and over and over and over and over. They have their book group, they have their spelling group, we do a handwriting program here, Handwriting Without Tears. They have expectations of their work, they'll have weekly lessons with math, language, geography, history. There's expectation about the choice, so within the choice, it can be teacher or child driven, but there are expectations of works that have to be completed and lessons they have to have. So choice within boundaries set by the teacher and the child, and we kind of work together on that. So assessment and homework. So in Montessori, we don't do standardized testing. They do it in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade as a practical life experience. Practical life means at that age, they will be moving at some point into middle school, and they have to know how to sit for a test. So they do that starting in 4th grade, which isn't so often. Public school, they start standardized testing in 3rd grade. So we assess through observation and through their work. We're constantly assessing how they're doing, how they're completing their work, are they understanding? We might ask them to give a lesson to another child. And I'll tell you what, there's one way to tell if your child is understanding the work, and it's to ask them to teach it to somebody else. And if they can teach it, then you know they've got it. If all of a sudden it's time to teach it and they are confused or they're mixing up numbers or words or however, then you know, okay, we need to go back and we need to do it again. So it's meaningful assessment, and again, we're not teaching to any test, we're not teaching them this knowledge that has to be like this because this is what they're going to be tested on. They're taught from the Montessori curriculum, and then within that, we assess through note-taking, observation. There can be assessment through their final report when it's time for them to take notes and compile their research. Okay, we're assessing. Did they learn how to write a paragraph? Are they remembering that capital letters begin sentences and we don't have random capitals in the middle of words? We end with punctuation. You know, we're checking through the big assignments as well through our Pinewood Derby research. How are we understanding physics? How are we understanding the unit we have on simple machines? When it comes to kind of the summation, the big project, what does it look like? How are they integrating it? How are they working with it? Are they understanding it? Are they not? And then a big thing too is just arrival times and extended absences. Arriving on time at this age means if you're late, you have missed the beginning. So children have started working, lessons have started, and you're walking in and you're like, whoa, where am I? Now all my friends are doing this and I've got to catch up. And so it is important at this age to be here. They want to be like their peers, and if their peers are getting here between 8:30 and 8:45 and they're rolling in at 9:15, it's uncomfortable because then they start to feel different. Whereas in a 3 to 6 year old, that might not even gauge with them. They just come in and put on their, it's just different. And here they're like, wait a minute. I have a child who comes in now and says, am I late? No, you're not late. She was really working on being on time because she was late. And then she'd come in and it was uncomfortable. She just felt like kind of isolated when everyone started, and 45 minutes later she comes in. And so it's important for them. And then for them to be here, if they miss huge chunks of school for vacation or whatever, and of course that does happen, but you know, it's hard when they're missing things. It's just hard. It's nice for them to kind of be here for the bulk of it, so that they can be with their friends, they can do the work, they're not missing the great stories, they're not missing the special lessons. Because catching up from that can be tough when your friends have all moved on and you're kind of trying to scramble to get back there.